I want to show you today how I use the printable Craft World card-based templates. There's lots of different ways that you can use them. You can simply use them as a guide and cut and score your own, or you can actually use the template on your cardstock to do your score lines. So this will involve using a few tools. You can have some scissors. I like to use a craft knife and a ruler just to get into some of the cut lines that my trimmer won't reach. If you're going to do the outer edges and you want to make them really nice and sharp, you can use a paper trimmer or a guillotine. And then one thing I definitely recommend is a scoreboard as well. You don't always need one as large as this because usually the score lines will be smaller than A4. Now, of course, what you are going to need is, first of all, a sheet of cardstock to create your card base from. Now, make sure that your cardstock will fit your template on completely, so there's no joins in it. And then just pop this to the side. We're going to work with the template first. Now, I've printed this off from Craft World onto just some thin copy paper. This is just some rough print paper that I already had in my printer. I'm going to be disposing of it afterwards anyway. Now we're going to cut into this template, so it's well worth sometimes actually cutting or printing more than one out. So I'm going to cut around the edges. Now you can do this with scissors, but as I said, if you want some really nice crisp clean edges, sometimes it's just quicker to bring in your guillotine or your trimmer and get those nice sharp edges. So as you can see around the template, we've got a solid line. Now the solid lines on the template are cut lines. You do have a guide here. And then all of the dotted lines are going to be where you're going to score. But I always do the outlines first before looking at the inside score lines and cut lines. Now you can dispose of these pieces. It may help you to keep the guide there to the side just to refer back to if this is the first time you've used templates. But generally with templates across the internet, they will usually use the same guide. So solid lines for cutting and dotted lines for score lines. Now, before I start cutting and scoring into this, I'm actually going to attach it to my cardstock. So bringing my cardstock in here. Now you can tack this down with some low tack tape if you want to, but I find the best way to do this is actually to use a repositionable spray adhesive, and I would adhere this to the reverse of my card. So I just have a small amount of the adhesive on the back of the template there so I can remove the template afterwards. Now I'm just going to lay that gently down over a portion of my cardstock, and I'm now going to cut my card to the size of the template, again bringing in the guillotine. This way you don't have as much waste on your cardstock. If you were to adhere the template on full A4 sheet onto your cardstock and then cut it out, you'd have a lot of waste around the outside. This way we're cutting off larger strips that we could potentially use for other projects. So pop those to the side. Now what I need to do is I need to cut these two solid lines. Now my trimmer is a guillotine, so I'm not going to be able to do that without cutting the ends here and here. So this is where I come in with my craft knife. I'm just going to lay my ruler over the lines and use my knife to go through just where the solid line is. Just have a little look and make sure that that has gone all the way through to the other side. Going to repeat this on the other side too. Sometimes it's worth just making your cut line a millimetre or so longer than that on the template to allow for your score line to be a little bit thicker than the dotted line. So now I'm going to turn this the other way because I need to score along these dotted lines. So just putting this onto my scoreboard, I'm scoring through both the template, and this is why we print it onto a very thin paper, and I'm scoring through the cardstock that's underneath. Because I'm going through 2 layers, I am going over my score lines 2 or 3 times to make sure that I'm getting those all the way through. Now just have a little look at your card and make sure that you have got your score lines where you need them throughout and that the pressure has gone all the way through both layers. Because I used a removable adhesive spray, I can now remove my template from the back of my cardstock, just being careful not to tear and leave any residue behind. And if I'm really careful, I can now reuse this again. It's a good idea to keep yourself a piece of acetate aside so that you can place your template with the sticky side down onto the acetate, and then you can use that over and over again.